Like I had to
Mm.
give myself permission to rest. And it really felt like, so much of my work around rest has been like unwinding and unlearning a lot of the stuff that I've learned about what it means to slow down and what it means to be productive and, in our culture and all these different things. And rest was so tied to that, right? Because it's like, if I'm
Mhm.
being productive all the time, then I can't rest. And if I'm not productive all the time, then I have no value. But for me, it really was about giving myself that permission. And my hope was that readers would have the experience that you had. It was like, oh, she's not
Mhm.
giving me permission. I'm giving
Mhm.
myself permission.
Welcome to Mind, Body, Spirit, Food. I'm Nicki Sizemore, and in this podcast, we explore how food connects us and sometimes disconnects us to our minds, bodies, spirits, the earth, and our communities. This is a space dedicated to bringing more presence, intention, ease, and joy into the process of feeding ourselves. Let's dive in. Hello, my dears. Welcome back to the show. I just want to start by saying thank you for being here and for listening and for supporting this show. Y'all mean so much to me, and really, you are the inspiration behind what I do. Speaking of inspiration, today's guest has been highly inspiring to me. It's funny because I'm doing things a little bit differently today. Usually I record these intros after I've had the conversation with my guest, and today I'm doing it before. And let me start by introducing her. So, I'm going to be speaking with Ashley Neese, who is a breathwork teacher and author who explores embodiment, healing, and collective presence. She's the creator of regenerative breathwork, founder of the Deeper Call newsletter, and author of 2 books, including How to Breathe and Permission to Rest. We're going to be focusing on this topic of rest and how we bring rest into nourishment, not just in the obvious ways, but in ways that might surprise you. And so as I was talking before I introduced Ashley, usually I record these intros after the podcast episode. And today I'm exhausted. It has already been a very long day. It's late in the afternoon. And I knew that after this call, after my conversation with Ashley ends, that has to be the end of my day too. So I'm giving myself permission to do things differently. And I think that's my call to you all this holiday season. Let's give ourselves permission to do things in a way that truly honors where we're at. Can we tune in and pay attention to what we authentically need? Even within the obligations that we have around us, I think there are micro ways of doing that, like I'm doing today. Simple shift of my recording schedule. So without further ado, I can't wait to jump into this conversation. As always, you can support this work by sharing this conversation with your friends. You can rate the podcast on your podcast apps, and you can become a subscriber to the Mind, Body, Spirit, Food Substack newsletter, where I dive into these topics of how we can nourish ourselves in order to gain more presence, freedom, and joy, not just in the kitchen, but in our lives. I also share brand new recipes, and if you become a paid subscriber for just a few bucks a month, and paid subscriptions are on sale for 30% off, so it's, I think, $45 a year, you make all of this happen. Truly couldn't happen without community support. Paid subscribers get access to all of the recipes, bonus content, special discounts, and a whole bunch of other fun perks. And last but not least, my Mind, Body, Spirit, Food cookbook is almost on shelves. It will hit shelves January 13th, but you can pre-order copies now for the holidays, maybe for yourself or for a loved one. And if you want a signed copy, you can order one from my local bookstore, Split Rock Books, and they will send you a signed, personalized copy, which would be a really wonderful gift for the holidays. Okay, my friends, I can't wait to see where this conversation takes us. I'm going to be riding this wave right with you. So let's get to the show. Well, hi, Ashley. I am so excited for this conversation. And I'm going to start by asking you the first question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what is your cultural upbringing and how has that influenced your relationship to food?
I grew up in the southeast of the United States in Atlanta, and my family's Jewish. And so there's definitely a lot of cultural food stuff in many Jewish families I know. Lots of stuff. I have a lot of memories of, high holidays, Passover, Rosh Hashanah, Hanukkah, just like gathering the family together, lots of meals, obviously, all the, ceremony that goes along with that and ritual that goes along with that, which I think as I got older, I kind of took for granted. But especially now that I have kids, it's interesting to think about those pieces. And while I don't actively practice Judaism in my life, it's something that my partner and I have talked about, like what rituals, from our culture do we want to impart on our children? And so it's definitely had a huge impact on, I'm always trying to feed everybody. I think that's the stereotypical Jewish grandmother, Jewish mother's always like, you're not eating enough. Like you need to eat more. Like, please eat. So that was definitely, a big part of it. And just really the idea of being able to kind of love people through the food that you're making, and that food can be a way that we care for ourselves and for each other. And again, that's something that I really kind of went against for so long as a young adult trying to find my way. But it's definitely something over the years, and especially obviously since becoming a parent, but really looking at that. Like I'm the main, person who cooks most of the meals in our family. And it's something that, while it can be stressful at times, especially with 3 kids under 7 who are in varying stages of what they will and won't eat,
Yes.
And
Yes. Oh, wow.
it's so real, right? You're
Yes.
okay, so are we eating this today? It's like, oh, I hate that. I'm like, okay, well, you ate it yesterday.
Yesterday you loved this.
I know. It's like, what do you mean? But it's definitely one of my strongest connections to how I feel that I, take care of my family is definitely through food. Yeah.
What drew me to your work was your book, Permission to Rest. And it's interesting because the title of that book was I saw the title and it was my body was buy this book. And yet, as I've sat with the book and read the book and then pondered it, it's Permission to Rest and then Revolutionary Practices for Healing, Empowerment, and Collective Care. And it was the word permission, which really struck me. And of course, it was a permission I had to give myself. And it was funny because you and I just hopped on. I had to push this podcast back. You had to push this podcast back because of life circumstance. And as I usually record the intros for my shows after the conversation, and today it has been a really long day, and I know I need to end my day after this conversation. And I also know that this conversation will nourish me, and that's kind of where I want to leave things. And I had to give myself permission to do that one simple schedule shift of record things differently. And how much freedom did that give me? And so I guess I want to talk about this idea of permission, and then this idea of this, it's a revolutionary act because it is, and rest should be the most innately normal thing in the whole wide world because that's what we're biologically wired to do. So what drew you to those two words, and why? Why do we need permission? I think we all know the answer, but I think it's worth contemplating.
I love what you're sharing. And I've written 2 books, and when I title books, it's always I'm not one of those people where I just kind of meditate and then the title drops in. It's kind of a slog. It's a lot of work. I write a lot of different bad titles. And,
Yes,
of course, then I'm running things by the editor and I'm like, is this? And we're tinkering it with it, trying to make it just right. But we landed on permission because it was a lot of what you just shared. I had to give myself permission to rest. And it really felt so much of my work around rest has been unwinding and unlearning a lot of the stuff that I've learned about what it means to slow down and what it means to be productive and, in our culture and all these different things. And rest was so tied to that, right? Because it's if I'm being productive all the time, then I can't rest. And if I'm not productive all the time, then I have no value. So then rest is really at the bottom of the barrel. I'm I'm not doing that because I need to keep proving myself. And, and some of that is tied to, the capitalist culture that we live in. And some of it's tied to our own individual lives and families and, all these things. But for me, it really was about giving myself that permission. And my hope was that readers would have the experience that you had. It was oh, she's not giving me permission. I'm giving myself permission. And I was I think if people get even 1 or 2 chapters in, they're going to go, oh, right, this is something that I have to give myself because this is only work that I can really do.
Yes, absolutely. What brought you to this work?
Feeling just so bad, being sick and struggling with, at the time, I would have categorized them as like big episodes of burnout. And looking back, a lot of the reason I was so burnt out was because my nervous system was so kind of ratcheted up in like survival mode for so long because of
Mm.
past trauma. So I think that there's a lot of confusion around that, even in our culture. It's like, well, I'm so burnt out, and I'm burnt out because of culture and because the pace that we're all going and like the demands that we have on ourselves and, as a society. And that's true. But what I found, especially in my private practice, is that so often there's also like a trauma narrative for a lot of the people that show up to work with me. And that was something that I had to unpack too. It's like, well, part of why I'm going is because that's how my nervous system is set up. And so resting
Mm.
then became this practice of, oh, it's not just taking a nap. It's actually doing some deeper healing work to look at like, why do I feel like a sense of urgency all the time?
I just want to like touch on that because I think people might think of rest as sleep. And, I think sleep can be a form of rest, but are they the same thing or how are they different?
Definitely taking a nap can be considered rest, but the way that I define rest is, I talk about it in terms of that it's a biological imperative. And it's also, something that can downregulate our nervous system, but it's not completely shutting down, right? So when we think of sleep, our body completely shuts down. Like we go
Mhm.
into digestive mode, we go, all these like amazing processes happen with restoration in our body, and our brain consolidates. Like all these amazing processes happen when we're sleeping. But when we're resting, we're really looking for, like, the way I define it for myself is, okay, where can I stop pushing? Where can I slow down my urgency? Where can I stop performing? And
Mm.
where can I just let myself be?
You have several chapters in the book devoted to this, but can we get into the neurobiology and the physiology of rest and how I know that we know that this influences our nervous system, but can we get into that a little bit? Because I think people might be surprised at how profound rest is in our health. And this is so interesting because it's like for me, it is tied to my performance. And I hate that word, but also like, if I am not rested and nourished, then I'm not going to be able to show up. I mean, at least for the work I do, I have to show up 100% grounded in me. That is just because of what I do. I can't like fake it. I mean, there's admin stuff I can totally fake when I'm tired, but like I have to like be really like rested. Even though I can be tired, I can still be rested. So, can we talk about this like neurobiology and physiology element?
Sure. So rest downregulates our sympathetic nervous system. And so what that means is it brings our nervous system from a state of activation more down into slowing down parasympathetic. And I just want to say that with a caveat because, again, there's so much in media right now that's like, oh, I just always have to keep my nervous system at parasympathetic. Like if my nervous
Yes.
system is activated, it's
God.
like bad. And that's not the case. Like our nervous systems are designed to go like this all day long. We get up in the morning, we've got sympathetic. Great. So we can get out of bed. For those of us who don't, because we're too tired or we're struggling with depression or any of those things, then we'll notice we get up and, oh, I just don't have what I need to get out of bed. Right. And so that's a more
Mhm.
depressed nervous system state. So that's what we're looking for. We want that activation and we want that parasympathetic state. So sympathetic, parasympathetic, kind of all day long. And that's the main thing. And, when we are kind of like how my nervous system was kind of set up was to be in that kind of vigilant, activated state most of the time.
Mhm.
So coming down to rest wasn't something that I could do. I could crash at the end of the day. Like I could just like get in my bed
Mhm.
and crash, but that wasn't the same as kind of slowing things down to a restful state, which is why when I get to Shavasana and yoga, I'd be like, oh my God, like I have to lay here for 10 minutes. Like, I don't like
Right.
this. This doesn't
Yeah.
feel good. Right. But as I mentioned before, we want our parasympathetic to be turned on because it does bring us into repair mode, digestive mode. They say rest and digest, right? It brings us into that restoration mode. So that's really important. When we give ourselves a time to rest, our body can do the maintenance that it needs to do. And then to your point, then we have clarity, we have better decision making, we have more kind of emotional availability to show up for the things that we want to show up for in our lives. We can do that when we've had rest. And I also want to just comment on your distinction. It's like we can show up tired and, still get through the day. Like there's something about that that I especially think for parents is so important. Like
Mhm.
I thought, oh, I'm resting and I am resting, but I'm still tired.
Yeah.
And like, just because you rest doesn't mean you're never going to feel tired. So
Yeah.
just to be clear about that. And it's actually okay, but it's the quality of your tiredness, right? It's like, that's what we always are
Mhm.
looking for with somatics. It's like, what's the quality of it? What's the texture? How does it feel in your
Mm.
body?
Even as you say that, it's like that sense of frazzlement that I
Mm,
feel when I'm tired. And I mean, I want to get into some of the practices that you share in this book, but even, I talk a lot about intention in my work because I find it's the through line of like everybody I've spoken with and all the elders I've spoken with and spiritual teachers, like bringing this idea of intention into our lives, not as a fad word, but as a guidepost to how we want to feel. And if I bring that intention into some deep breaths, perhaps, or maybe like I have like my little 5-minute magic naps. And it's just like, I just like lay there with myself with the intention of feeling rested instead
mm,
of laying there like, I gotta sleep right now, or getting to that place of like just you're crashing and you can barely function. That sense of intention. But there's one thing that I wanna talk about that just is striking me, and it's that sense of urgency that we are
mm,
so conditioned to have. This sense of urgency is actually what led me to write my new book, Mind, Body, Spirit, Food, because I would
mm,
bring that sense of urgency into the kitchen with me. And it is incredible how it affected not just my cooking practice, but my relationship to my body, my relationship to the foods I was eating. And then physically, I literally developed indigestion for 5 years. That sense of urgency was so wired within me I didn't even see it. And so I
mm,
had to, it started for me. I share some practices in my book to kind of start to unwire that in the kitchen. And that just started with some deep breaths. What are some practices, like tangible practices that people can start to recognize when they're in that state? Because sometimes I think it's hard. We're like, go, 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 go. Like we don't even know that's the mode that we're in. And then some simple practices to start to unwire that because that is revolutionary right now. Like
mhm.
as your title says, like in the state of this culture, that's a revolutionary thing to do.
Mm. Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I so appreciated what you shared. And, step one is often awareness. And you really spoke to this. It's like, I was so urgent for these 5 years, but I didn't even know. Right.
Mhm.
And so many people don't know that they're kind of running on the sense of urgency until they get a diagnosis or
Yeah.
until they're in like extreme pain, whether that's emotional pain, physical pain, mental anguish, whatever it is. But it's like things have to get really loud. Right. And it's like, I think that is often an indication. So if there's a lot of loudness, in your life and your body, then
Mm.
that might
Mhm.
be an indication that there's something to look at. Right. And then, one thing I have my clients do, and once they've really start to recognize, okay, I've got this sense of urgency. What are the somatic markers? Like, what does that feel like in my body?
Mm.
So I'll often hear things like, oh, it feels like I can't breathe. It feels like my chest is tight. It feels like my throat is constricted. It feels like my mind just can't stop being like 2 hours ahead of where I am right now. Like I'm always in the future. I'm always just like worried about what's coming next. Right. So there's worry, there might be anxiety, but there's always the sense of like orienting like out towards the future. There's never like an orientation on what's actually happening in the moment,
Mhm.
right? And so
Yeah.
there's like this like these mental frames, there's somatic markers. And so I think it's important for each of us to just take a moment and check in and be like, okay, what are the signs? What are the signals?
Mm.
Maybe before I'm like at the hospital or before I'm having the full-blown panic attack or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? And I'm reaching for the thing, whether that's food or I'm reaching for, my smartphone or I'm reaching for something to like get me out of that,
Numb it.
right?
Yeah.
Right, or
Yeah.
work or whatever
Mhm.
it is. Like we can
Yeah.
throw ourselves into so many things and there's so many distractions out there. And I'm not even suggesting that distractions are bad. I think they can really be helpful in some ways. But I think that, noticing what those markers are. And then for practices, you shared one so beautifully, just slowing down your breath. I mean, that's often
Mhm.
one that I will share with clients early on is just what can we do to just slow things down? And I'll have them focus on the exhale because that is connected directly to our parasympathetic nervous system. So I'll have them just focus on their exhale and just see if you can extend it by like 1 or 2 counts, right? Just so simple. We always have to
Mm.
start really small. It's just what's the
Mhm.
smallest thing. I'm an amateur horse trainer. That's something I've been doing for the last few years. And horse training, one of the phrases that we use a lot is, what is the smallest try? And I love this idea
Mm.
of the smallest try because it's really like, what is the tiniest little thing that you can offer your horse to get them to learn the thing that you're trying to get them to learn. We can apply this to ourselves. It's like, what's the smallest thing? Maybe that's a 2-second exhale, right? Maybe that's taking a breath and looking out the window, whether we live in a city, whether we live out in nature, wherever you just look out the window and see where you can locate some nature. Maybe that's a blue sky, maybe that's a tree, maybe that's a dog running by, whatever it is. Nature is so grounding, nature is so supportive. Or can we just move? A lot of times, especially for my clients who are more anxiety prone, I'm like, just move your body, take a walk around the block, do some jumping jacks. I don't care what you do a couple squats, do a push up, like just do something to get your body moving so you can start to slow back down.
Yeah, that is always surprising for me. Like there's a distinction, and I've gotten pretty good at feeling this within myself of when I know a walk is going to be the most restful thing I could do. And it's funny because you're moving, right? And then there's times when, I shared I have a weekly kind of short episode format of the podcast where I think the intention for that show was I will slow down. And I found myself on the walk, like, okay, I got to go take my walk. I got to walk. And I was like, wait, this is like the opposite. This is not the point of this entire thing. But there is that distinction between when movement can provide rest. And for me, it usually is movement. I mean, I'm very fortunate to live in the middle of the woods. So it's like outside in trees. But I have friends who live in the city. And like you said, like that can also feel restful. And so I want to talk about more of these practices because I think it is so individual. Like I talk about food so much in our bodies. And my mission on the show is to help people find this sense of sovereignty where they know themselves so well. They know how to feed themselves, not just with food, but in every, aspect. What are some different ways that people can find rest? And some of them I think people might find to be surprising.
Yeah. One of my favorite ones for clients, especially my clients who are like, just like, I don't want to sit still. I don't want to do breath work. I don't want to meditate. Like, I don't want to do anything that looks like that. And so then I'll say, okay, do you like music? And I've never met a client who was like, no, I don't like music. They've all been like, yeah, I love music. I have music okay, what can you listen to that can help you just focus and slow down? And they've always got something. Oh, sometimes when I write, I listen to this. Or, oh, when I'm cleaning my kitchen, I listen to X. And I'm like, it's not a podcast, right? We're not trying to I love podcasts, of course. We're on your beautiful podcast right now. But in terms of rest, it's like, what can I listen to that's just going to help kind of drop my nervous system down? Because there's this amazing phenomenon called entrainment. So our nervous system will entrain to whatever the pace or the rhythm is around us, which is why when you walk in a forest, you feel so good because your nervous system is entraining to the kind of rhythm of the land, right? And it's the same with music. It's like why when there's babies in hospitals and one baby will cry and then the other baby immediately starts crying. It's like, oh, I hear somebody crying. We're crying now. That's what we're doing, right? This is what's happening. So that can work in a lot of different directions, but it's one of the reasons, like, the scientific reasons why music works and why music can help us calm down. So that's a really fun one. I find, especially for folks who are just like, I don't want to have to sit with my breath. It's like, oh, but I'll put some headphones on and listen to just music. No problem.
Yeah.
So that's a great one. Anything nature related. I mean, there's just a plethora of scientific research on the benefits of being in nature. I mean, there's this really cool study that they did with cancer patients just in hospitals, not even outside, just looking at photographs of nature and how that shifted. It was like shifted their healing process. So it's like, I mean, I would say you don't even have to go outside. You could just look at a picture, but I'm going to be a big proponent of actually going outside if you can, if it's accessible, right? And again, if you're in a city, find a park nearby, walk down your street. Like there's so many ways to do that. Go to a botanical gardens. I mean, cities often have like incredible botanical gardens, but there's all these different ways to access rest that can also be just really fun and that don't have to be as kind of emotionally confronting as like sitting and doing a breathwork practice,
In that same episode that I was sharing, I Will Slow Down episode, it's interesting because now if I can enter the kitchen in a state where my nervous system is regulated and can dance between both states, because I had a podcast episode that I will link to with Sam Fulton, who it was all about the nervous system and this dance between parasympathetic and sympathetic. But part of cooking is like toggling between the two, right? Because you've got to be aware of what's going on. Sometimes things get hot. But I do find that in the kitchen, the cooking can be incredibly restful tonight, my husband picked up our farm chair today and we have all these honey nut squashes and a cauliflower, and my
Mm,
whole body knows what it wants to make. And
mm,
I know that if I enter the kitchen with just that pace, like honoring a slower pace, then cooking will feel like rest.
mm.
I guess the question is for you, like, do you find that since I guess what I heard from you is like you are the one to nourish your family. Although I have to say when my kids were really young, that was all a little different. Now my kids are 10 and 15. What are your favorite forms of rest?
Mm. These days, I can be cooking. It just depends on the meal. It's probably not breakfast, if I'm
Mm,
honest.
never.
It's
That's
probably
why my
it's
husband does
like
breakfast. I don't do
yeah,
breakfast.
it's not really breakfast, but usually dinner, like, it's if it's a lunch or a dinner, then those are, like, a lot more chill in our household, and and then on the weekends, I often, get my kids involved in the kitchen, and they volunteer too. It's not a hard sell to get them to help me out, but, I learned to cook really young with my grandmother, so it's also something I
Mm,
want each of them to be able to do as, like, a fun life skill, but
mhm.
in terms of my personal rest practice, it looks a lot like sitting and breathing, taking 10 minutes to do a breathing practice. It also looks a lot like being outside on our land, tending our garden, and then spending a lot of time with our horses.
What a gift. In your book, you say that rest is a practice. It's something we have to practice. I think we've touched on that, but I think I want to hone that in because it's, at least for me, unwiring that sense of urgency meant that I had to make those 2 breaths in the kitchen and my little practice that I share in my book. I had to make that a practice. I really did.
Mhm.
And now it's so innately in me that it no longer is something I have to even really think about. But I do think for people who want to incorporate rest into their life in a meaningful way, it does take practice. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up because many of us, myself included, have been conditioned to believe that, rest is something we shouldn't do or that it makes us, have less value, right? All these different things in our
Mhm.
productivity culture. So I think because a lot of us have kind of been conditioned out of that mindset, or, there's that aspect. And then for those of us who have suffered from a lot of trauma, a lot of times we can interpret like stillness and slowness as danger, right? That can bring up a lot of threat
Mm.
in our nervous system. So when the
Mm.
nervous system feels threatened, it's not going to slow down or stop because it's not safe, right? So there's kind of two different pieces. Or sometimes those pieces get
Yeah.
intertwined depending on the person. But, the practice, it essentially means we have to teach ourselves, and we have to teach ourselves through repetition, right? That's what practice is. It's a
Mhm.
repeated practice that we do over and over. And, what I found in my own system is that through practice, that's where my system has learned how to feel safe, right? It didn't just happen once or twice or even 3 times. Like it's been a consistent practice over time where my nervous system was like, okay, it's okay if I slow down. Nothing bad is happening. Like, I'm okay. I'm safe right now. I wasn't safe back then, but I'm safe now. Right. And so I think that's a big part of it because eventually my nervous system was like, I believe you. I'm on board, but it took a while,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And for me, it was like to understand that the world wasn't going to fall apart when I stopped producing. Because I
Yes.
think, at least in my mind, it was like, no, I have to do all of these things. Like, you know, how can I possibly slow down? It's not even possible. And that was a story that I told
Mm,
myself. And actually, as I slowed down, it was amazing to see how things organically shifted around me. And I think part of this that I want to talk about is boundaries, because
mm.
I had to create some real boundaries and real space for this practice. So, could you speak to boundaries a little bit?
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up because that's such a huge piece. It's such a huge piece, especially for those of us who have a sense of like, I have too much to do, or there's too many people depending on me, right? That's one I hear a
Mhm.
lot. Yeah, I just have too much kind of output, right?
Yeah.
And there's no way for me to rest, just to your point. Like, I can't, literally can't even imagine a world in which I get to do that. And that's where the boundaries really come into play. And I always encourage folks to just start really small. Like it doesn't have to be, something that's going to like kind of shake your world or make things really difficult for you. But even just setting a boundary around, okay, for these 5 minutes, I'm going to, take a walk outside, or for these, 2 minutes, I'm just going to sit with my breath, or for this song, I'm just going to listen to this one song and just give myself this space to rest for these 3 minutes and 50 seconds, however long the song is. So just keep your practice really small. And, the thing about change, right? Anytime we change, whether that's we change our food, I mean, gosh, especially in my family, we could do a whole podcast on that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're eating what now? And you're eating how? It's just like,
Oh,
there's
God.
so much like craziness around the food, and like, oh, is so-and-so eating this, or they're not eating that? And it's just, it's like everyone's in everyone's
Oh, yeah.
business. But right. So there's that. So it's also this kind of going in with this understanding that like resting is going to change me. And having a rest practice is also having a change practice, right? Because we're
Yeah.
actively in a process of changing ourselves. And that is going to have an effect. And that's for better, for worse, right? But it's just knowing that, like, I want folks to be aware of that. And if you're
Yeah.
in any kind of change process, you know that. And obviously, if they're working with you and they've done your work, they know. Even, being so intentional about what we eat and being so connected and really knowing our bodies well enough to know, like, oh, that's what I want to have for my meal right now. That's what's going to make me feel so good and nourished. Like, there's a learning curve there in the beginning, and, there can be challenges along the way. And so those boundaries are really important. And it's important to always remember that the boundaries are for you, right? I think there's so much confusion that I'm setting a boundary for my mom or whatever. No, you're setting the boundary for you. Like, it's your practice, not somebody else's.
This is so rich, because I think part of the fear people have is that we are going to change. That was the scariest part for me. I'm going to change. And what if, therefore, nobody loves me anymore? Or,
Yeah.
And I remember I had to start when my little one was a toddler. For me, this whole practice started back then. And it started with me taking baths. Like, I was not a bath person. I was like, what? And it would be at night. And I realized I could tell the family, I'm going to take a bath tonight and I'm going to shut the door. And I am not kidding you. It probably took a year for her to stop coming in the bathroom.
Sure. Sure.
But I really was like, had to teach her that this is my time. And do you know how bad I felt? Like, how bad it felt for me to shut the door to take a bath. And I feel none of that now. Now I can very clear with my kids, like, I need this time, and they can see the benefit. Like, now they're old enough where they can see, like, I need to go take a breather. They see that for themselves. And gosh, that's what I want them to learn. But gosh, is it hard? It is hard. I just want to acknowledge that. Like, it's hard. And everyone, at least in my experience, has changed with me. And I guess if there had been real resistance to the thing, and there might have been, that would have been a definite possibility, and that would have warranted some hard conversations. But I had to do this for me because I was burned the hell out.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're navigating this part of the conversation, because I think it's a conversation that doesn't get much airtime, and I think it's a really important one. And it's so important to be able to know going in, like you said, there might be feelings of guilt, there might be feelings of discomfort, and that can be part of the process, and that it's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong. Like, my nervous system needs to hear, like, you can feel the guilt, and it doesn't have to be an emergency. It's like, wait, something's really wrong now. It's like, no, I'm just feeling guilty. And like, that is uncomfortable, but like, it's actually okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to bring up the holiday season, because this episode is airing right in the middle of December, where biologically, I think we're all being asked to kind of go inward and get quiet. And culturally, there's more going on this month than like any other time of the year. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure, and it can be hard to set boundaries and to say no. But I do feel like if we can commit to little practices like we're talking about today, how much more magical this season can feel. Do you have any tips for people in navigating the holidays and the holiday season?
I love this question. There's a lot of things. And I loved what you said, like this kind of small practice, or this like tiny practice, because I love when things just feel doable, right? And they feel like,
Mhm.
oh, that's something that I can do, not like, that sounds nice. Yeah, maybe I'll get to that in
Yeah.
2027. You know what I mean? Like, no, what can I do now?
Yeah.
I think really checking in with yourself, and I know folks who are listening to you and who do your work already have a sense of this, is like, what's actually nourishing for you? Right? And just
Mm.
to really put that at the forefront because there's so much during this time of year that is like distracting us, that is asking for our attention, that can be challenging, right? Talk about grief. I mean, this holidays can bring up so much grief for folks for so many different reasons. And so it's like, what are the things in the forefront that I can do to nourish myself? What are the things that feel especially restful or restorative for me that I can then set a couple like small boundaries around so that I can make sure that I'm getting those things? Like, I love that you talked about the bath. It's like, what is your bath as you're listening to that? It's like, what's your one thing that you're just like, oh, I know if I do that, I'm going to feel so good and restored and just
Mm.
like, I have some me time. I think that's so important because that helps us navigate the
Yeah.
inevitable stuff that's challenging, right? Or the inevitable stuff that's like just vying for our attention. And like you said, it's such a strange time because it's like the world and, in the Northern Hemisphere is asking us to slow down. It's asking us to go inward. But like the commercial,
Yeah.
land that we live in is like, buy, sell, like, da, 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 you need more stuff. You're not okay. You need to buy more stuff now. And it's on sale. So buy it now because you're really not okay. So it's like,
Yes.
that's a big part of it. And, I think for me, one thing that I've really had to do is just like over the years, and I've learned this, especially with 3 young kids, is like my standards have to be so much lower and my
Amen.
expectations, right? It's like lower your
Mm.
standards, lower your
Yeah.
expectations, like just
Oh
do
my
it. Like
gosh.
it'll feel so much
Yes.
better.
I love that so much. It's so true because, like, we always travel to spend the holidays with my family, and it's wonderful. And it's like, I just have to release, I have to be very, very intentional about
Yes.
showing up and just letting it be what it is.
Yes.
But also waking up and like having time to myself in the morning
Yes.
so
Yeah.
that I can weather whatever's going to be triggering me.
Yes. Right?
Because then I have that moment of pause. And actually, this leads me so brilliantly into this next
Mm,
question, because that
mm.
moment of pause can be so powerful. You talk about this in the book. I talk about this in our cooking practice about just taking a moment of pause between your day
Yeah.
and cooking dinner. And for me, that involves sometimes tying on an apron. And it's like this threshold that means I'm switching gears now. And then sometimes it's deep breaths. But I just kind of want to hear from you because you talk about it so beautifully, the power of the pause.
Mm. First, I just want to say I love the way you illustrated putting on your apron and crossing that threshold because I feel like pausing for me often comes in transition. And I think there's
Mhm.
so many transitional moments during a day where we can just take a beat. Right. And so that's often something that I'll suggest. It's like, okay, because those moments are already happening. Like we don't have
Yeah.
to go looking for them. Right. It's like when my client's like, there's nowhere that I can like take a deep breath. Like my life is just too hectic. It's like, okay, well, like when are you getting the kids out the door? Or like you said, when are you like going to cook a meal? Or when are you making your
Mhm.
coffee? Or when are you brushing your teeth? It's like, what are the things that you're already doing? And what are those transitional times? And transitions are a really powerful time to take a breath. And
Mhm.
they're a really powerful time just to stop for a second and put your hand on your heart and go, okay, it's like on to the next thing, right? And there's an acknowledgement that something is shifting. And there's an acknowledgement of you going internal just for one beat, just for one moment. And, it's so funny with my kids. Like, I was getting so just amped at like the shoe situation, like getting out the door. I'm like, it doesn't have to be this crazy. Like, why is it so insane?
Right.
And then I was like, and then I'm like trying to like get them to do all this stuff. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
right. Like, this is parenting 101. Like, no, what do I need to change? And I'm like,
Yeah.
mommy needs to just take a breath. Mommy's going to take a breath and then we're going to do shoes. And it's like, oh, just even that one thing during the
Mm.
transition just shifts the energy. And my kids might still be flailing around. They might not, but like, I'm okay,
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good time to practice the pause.
Oh my gosh. There's so much. I'm so glad. I just knew, my body knew that, like, oh, honey, you're going to walk away from this conversation feeling so rested and so nourished. So Usually I end my conversations asking, if it were your last meal on earth, what would it be in this moment? And I'm going to ask you that question. I don't even want you to think about it. I just want it to be like, in this second, what would it be? But then I also want to ask you, in this season of your life, and you've already touched on this, like, or in this moment, what sounds most nourishing to you?
Mhm. In this moment, what sounds most nourishing to me is being somewhere warm, a little warmer
Mm.
than where we are, and just sitting in the sun
Mm.
for a few minutes. Yeah.
Even as you said that, and I imagine that on my skin, like this feeling of the sun on my skin, how powerful imagination can be, right? Because
Right?
that
Yes.
feels nourishing, even though it literally snowed for the first time today.
Oh, wow. You're like, "That's"
Okay, if your last meal on earth in this moment, I hand you a plate of food, what would you choose?
Oh my god, it's just like a no-brainer. I'm gonna choose the meal I just had in LA last week at one of my favorite spots called Squirrel, and
Mhm.
it's, like, the most incredible. She does this, like, sorrel pesto with rice and preserved lemon and poached eggs, and they make homemade ricotta
Mm.
and, like, the freshest, most perfectly ripe avocado slices and, like, fermented watermelon radish. I mean, it is just this so many flavors, so many
Wow.
textures, but it's also just so comforting and grounding and just I could just literally eat that all day, every day.
Oh my god, that sounds amazing.
It's so good.
Ashley, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. Where can people find you?
Oh my gosh, you're so welcome, Nikki. This was so much fun. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation with you too, Nikki. And you can find me on my website. It's just ashleyneese.com. You can also find me over on Substack at The Deeper Call.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. If this work resonates with you in any way, you can support it by leaving a review or comment or sharing it with friends. Also, you can sign up for the newsletter, Mind, Body, Spirit, Food. And by becoming a paid member for just $5 a month, you help fund this entire project. Thank you so much to all of you who are already subscribed, especially to those paid subscribers. This work could not happen without you. I'm Nicki Sizemore, and as always, remember to nourish yourself with intention and love.